Hello everyone, we are in the Colosseum. This is the fourth part of the film dedicated to the Colosseum, and today we will look at Attica. This is the upper part of the Colosseum, where you need a special ticket. Getting it is as difficult as in the dungeon of the Colosseum, which we have already seen. And the first thing we see here is Roman concrete and lots of bricks, which the Romans used to finish building here. The Romans built the stands here because we know that initially there were no stands. Originally in the Colosseum were only travertine. Everything else was completed by the Romans, and probably this floor level, the level of this top of the arch was originally completely different. In general, I repeat, travertine is the base. The Romans didn't build from travertine, but built everything else. There is still a path to the upper tier. We will go there a little later. And here there is something completely incomprehensible, plastered just somehow. Probably the brick fell off and was somehow plastered over by restorers. Here are the brick ceilings, arches. They were somehow chopped down here. Apparently, the block, like this one, wasn't here initially. Or there was something else here, but Romans used these blocks because they need building material. Presumably, there were columns on these travertine blocks, but either they all collapsed or these columns weren't part of the Romans' plans because they need stands, an expansion of the stands, so everything was covered out here. And now we went up another level, and here most likely originally were also colonnades. This is our topest tier, on which there are also these travertine arches. And what is higher is fully Roman work. We see some consoles on these pillars here. And these are brick supports that were added in the 19th century, as was the floor, by the way. And we can see here the obvious unfinished nature of these arches. Some consoles are sticking out here. They are at different levels. It's difficult to imagine now what this was originally. And broken elements are lying around. And of course, there are gorgeous joints everywhere, absolutely zero gaps. We go up a level, the Romans had done all of this. They laid out the facade part more or less beautifully, but from the inside they had already laid it somehow and leveled it with bricks together with this Roman concrete, of course. It was not very high quality, so a lot collapsed. And here the arches and the entrance to the stands have more or less been preserved. Of course, the amount of work done by the Romans is impressive, and for them such huge construction projects was something incredible. But still, we need to separate what was done before them and what did they. This is a view of the upper tier. Originally there were colonnades on these travertine supports. Then there is this upper canopy with empty windows. This was done by the Romans too, Also, all the tents were made by the Romans. The Romans built a labyrinth under the arena and this upper tier. They bricked up the wall where people walked, but where the upper tier of stands was, and where everything was apparently closed by wooden stands, they of course didn't brick up. Of course, why to cover something that isn't visible? Here we clearly see that these blocks on which the decorative finish is visible, as well as entire elements of the columns, all this is laid on a mortar with large gaps, sloppily. Overall, it's clearly a primitive job. And a view of Rome. There's a lot of restoration work going on there now. They're putting up columns. This structure is also all made of bricks mixed with Roman concrete. In general, antediluvian Rome is a city made of bricks and Roman concrete, and travertine was used very, very rarely here. In fact, everything that was built from travertine by the Romans was taken from the ruins of the Colosseum and other ancient ruins. Well, if we go down a little lower, we can see a tray that hangs right from this attic, and it's located right in the place where the two outer arches break off. But why would they put a drainage channel inside the building? Because, and it's obvious that when the Romans built the attic, both rows of arches on the southern side were already missing. This water was already being diverted into the void. There was nothing here. By the way, one of these drainage elements lies right inside the Colosseum. It has a very interesting marks, but it doesn't look like a chisel. Everything is carved from a single stone. Very good work. We have already seen these marks in many places. It was clearly some kind of mechanism working. Not very smoothly, but from the inside and the outside. And we saw many such trays around the Colosseum, and of course, most of them were already broken. And the only thing that is misleading is the strange shape of this tray, where it could have been located and why exactly this shape, since it's obvious that these trays were not made by the Romans. They just used what they found. Basically, like the entire Colosseum, they used it, took it out, repaired it. They really wanted to use it as a huge arena. And here we can see Roman brickwork joined with broken travertine stones. Somewhere the holes are patched with bricks. Perhaps all this was then plastered like here, or covered with something, well, and then there are more beautiful walls. This travertine. Magnificent work. And these arches are simply gorgeous. In some places you can see some marks of some mechanism on them, but basically it's of course a magnificent work, smooth stones. Here you can see they restored it. this is a new restoration. They replaced the elements that had completely crumbled, and we see that the new restoration has a rough surface. They process it with a burr. By the way, in modern Rome, many stone structures are already polished in this way and have exactly the same marks on the surface. The original stones don't have such marks on the surface, but in some places you can sometimes see something, but it's not so rough. And this is already a 20th century renovation. They just cut the tiles and laid them. But they did a very bad job here, because the tiles are already crumbled and there are obvious cracks. Now this is the first floor facade that was already being repaired. We can see the same abrasive surface. Well, they repaired it as best they could. They didn't repair it very well, let's say badly. They already had to put some mortar on it, but of course it's far, far away from the original masonry. Not comparable at all. Everything is on the mortar, and the original stones are still standing, and they will stand if only they were not destroyed for a long time, picking out all this metal. Well, and various natural disasters also made their contribution. And here are the unfinished elements. When they removed this, why didn't they remove it here? It's possible that the Colosseum is just an unfinished building that people have already used for their own needs. The walls are not aligned. Here only the chamfer is removed. It's uneven here. This shows very well how exactly they built. That is, when the stone arrived at the site, it was unprocessed on the outer edge, and when it was joined with other stones, it was initially necessary to cut along the horizontal surface and between blocks, so they would join together perfectly. Everything else was removed after. Sorry, but no one built like this. No builder would do it like that. Removing of excess material of the stones after installation is much more difficult than preparing a block somewhere in a convenient place. This is a level more complicated, without technology that will allow you to do this easily. It's simply unprofitable to build like this. It's not practical at all. They made the arch, removed excess material inside, but left the rest unfinished. Here they removed the chamfer around the perimeter, but here they left other parts unfinished. This can be compared with the pyramids of Egypt. Any megalithic structure of the age of the gods has such traces. But it's interesting that here they removed the chamfers, but removed them by eye, didn't level them perfectly, as for example they leveled the cladding on the pyramids in Egypt, but leveled them directly by hand. And this corner itself was also made by eye. Of course, it came apart a little. The ideal lines is not visible. From this side, it's again visible that the framing wasn't finished, another confirmation of the unfinished construction. The chamfer is removed only from the edges, and the stones are not finished. And this is very clearly visible in many places. And it seems like this whole row of arches was unfinished here. And here is a possible answer to how the metal that held these blocks together was poured. A hole was made between the stones in advance. Metal was fed through in it under pressure, and then it was plugged. And this is why everyone who dug for metal here knew exactly where to get it. That is why perhaps it was visible from the outside. Just like this block, a metal rod probably placed here, holding the elements together. And that is all about Colosseum. Thanks for watching, subscribe to the channel to see new discoveries.